here to talk about Biden's Middle East trip and share his views on the White House's approach to energy. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy is a member of the Senate Energy Committee, and we're so well-versed, Senator, in all the arguments on both sides and the talking points on both sides. I want to approach it a little bit differently. I mean, we did have the pandemic, and a lot of the majors and the oil companies kind of pulled in their horns, rightly so. Oil went negative at one point. Then to reopen, there are supply chain considerations. It's hard to get labor. It's hard to get rig guys back there. So there's all kinds of externalities, negative externalities that make it very difficult for us to get back to peak production in this country. So I don't know if everything can be blamed on what Joe Biden said, President Biden, before he became president, about shutting down fossil fuels. This might have happened anyway. But is there anything right now domestically that the president is just too stubborn to do, in your view, and is instead headed over to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela? Not headed there, but asking them for more production.
Yeah, so first we can say that the rig count in the United States has increased 58% over the last year. Not on federal lands, but on private lands.
Right.
And that's good. But now we have refinery capacity at 95%. So companies that buy out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve don't have the refinery capacity by which to put it into gasoline. So the administration, by their regulatory environment and other discouragement, we have refineries shuttering or converting to other products. And it's estimated, by the way, that this coming year, there'll be another 400,000 barrels of or gallons per day of domestic refinery capacity going offline. Now, the administration, I've called for an Operation Warp Speed. If you want a lower price at the pump, you don't just have to look at oil, you have to also look at every step in between, think refinery capacity. One thing that they could do, they're requiring smaller refineries to purchase RINs. Your audience knows what those are. That's driving up the price beyond their break-even point despite these high prices, and so they are closing. The administration has things they could do to take advantage of increased supply to now increase the refinery capacity or at least hold it even.
Well, that seems like they could do that right away, and it would have an immediate effect. I can't imagine that they wouldn't do that with an election coming up and with where the price at the pump is, although it's come down quite a bit. And then you can answer that, but then also the refinery problem goes back how many years, Senator? And it's not the Biden administration, it's ESG, it's the Green Lobby, it's the whole environment that we've been in, where oil companies or refining companies don't want to spend any money on 5- and 10-year projects or even 2-year projects because they're under attack by not just the Biden administration, but globally by people worried about climate change.
I'm totally with you on that. It's estimated that there'll be a $2.2 million, there's been about 2.2 million gallons a day offline in Europe. But on the other hand, they're increasing capacity in Asia. I've always said if you're concerned about the climate, you want your fossil fuel derivatives done in the United States because our environmental standards are the highest. When you go to Valero's refinery in St. Charles Parish, Louisiana, you're so impressed by how much they do to control emissions. That's not the case in China. So if our greenies want to have the fuel that everybody in the world needs, International Energy Agency, by the way, predicts increasing need for oil and gas through 2050. We should be refining in the United States. As regards the RINs, it's also a double-edged sword. They're using ethanol made from corn to dilute the gasoline when we have a worldwide food shortage. Now, some would say that corn used for ethanol is not going to be used for foodstuff. Nonetheless, that some way could be infused into the grocery supply chain to begin to lower the price of groceries. I think their policy on RINs is way off.
I even just saw a chart of coal usage globally, Senator, and after not hitting record use a couple of years, we're back to record uses for coal, not here, but in China and India. So a lot of these things we're doing, it's hard to really see whether we're going to have a benefit anytime soon on it. And if we're going to 2050 with increasing oil, that none of this really makes sense. And there's going to have to be some 180-degree moves across a lot of different industries, and I think government is going to have to do that and just face the facts that you can't get to zero emissions next year or the year after that.
Yeah, so this administration lacks a strategy. They will focus only on emissions, but not on the economy, the climate, the energy supply, and upon national security. We need a strategy which recognizes the nexus between climate, energy, the economy of a country and of a family, and our national security. If you ignore any of those, you don't get any of them. But if we had that coherent strategy, then we would have lower emissions taking place globally. We would have a better economy for the family and for our country. We'd have a better national security situation. Again, I don't want to sound partisan. I think you can objectively say this administration lacks a strategy which addresses those four intertwined issues.
Okay, so we have an election in November. We have one in 2024. But if you were a company that builds refineries or operates refineries, why would you have the confidence to risk your capital on a billion-dollar project that goes out 5 or 10 years? Is there anything that what would a Republican Congress or a Republican president do to ensure that you'll get a return on capital and that the rug won't be pulled out from you under you the next time we get a Democratic administration in?
Well, first, let's recognize that a lot of these companies might be invested in Asia. Asia does not enforce, Asian countries often do not enforce their environmental standards. And so your regulatory cost of compliance is much lower in Asia. And then you can ship to international markets, including back to the United States. We need to shut down that incentive. One thing I've argued for is a carbon border adjustment, in which you would say, okay, China, if you're not enforcing your environmental standards, then you are going to pay us the delta between that which we have to pay for compliance and that which you're not paying for compliance. That evens the playing field. By the way, it changes their incentive to not comply with environmental standards to comply. Now, if we have a well-performing company, again, I mentioned how impressed I was with Valero, they would not have to pay here either. It would be only those who are out a certain kind of comfort zone that would be required to pay a carbon border adjustment. Now, I can go further into it on another session, but I think that's something that would change the incentive for companies to locate here, to actually come to our environmental standards, as opposed to taking their jobs elsewhere and polluting the global environment more than otherwise.
Senator, we've got Pat Gelsinger, the CEO of Intel, joining us in just a little bit to talk about the CHIPS Act. It's been held up in Congress at this point, in Senate, by Mitch McConnell, who doesn't want to take that vote without some other concessions being given away on other issues. There is talk at this point, I know, to split out just the semiconductor portion of that, just the CHIPS Act itself, and have a vote on that. How would you vote on that? There's this argument that it's a lot of incentives from Asian countries to build those plants overseas. Is it important to have that here, and is it worth spending billions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer dollar to try and have those incentives?
I actually think so. If you look at our military complex, we use a lot of chips in our military. Now, you've got to certify through a supply chain integrity that those have not been corrupted, as chips have allegedly been corrupted in China before. Now, we also see Taiwan being threatened. And so there is this kind of China's attempting, through its Asian hegemony, to influence that which we are doing here. For our national security's sake, if nothing else, and I think there's other reasons as well, we need to have a robust domestic supply. It needs to be, a lot of these industries need to be reshored or nearshored as part of a kind of a global strategy as we regard China, which is seeking to undermine our national security, but also to increase our national security.
So if that vote comes to the floor, you will vote for it?
If that comes up as a separate bill, absolutely, I will vote for it.
All right. Senator Cassidy, yeah, let's talk again down the road and try to figure out, if you were an oil company executive, you need to think long and hard about deploying assets anywhere, considering that you can't really count on, what's going to happen 5 or 10 years down the road. I don't know what's going to change.
I agree with that. One thing that could change is regulatory certainty. I think we're on the same page there.
Okay. All right, Senator. Good to have you on. Thanks.